Hello, folks, and welcome back to Can't Teach Size, a hockey podcast. I'm one of your regular hosts, Lyss, and I am joined by my wonderful friend and colleague, Brady, today. And we come to you on the evening of the NHL Awards, but that's not what we're going to talk about. Today, we want to talk about the rumor mill that is the NHL right now, some of the trades that have happened, some that have almost happened, some that may still happen, and everything in between. But before we get started, Brady, how are you doing today?
Phenomenal. I cannot complain other than the fact that I slept like absolute dog shit yesterday, but that's life. Doing good. Back starting up a new week. It's beautiful outside. Nice to enjoy
Yes.
the weather finally. I'm just getting flashbacks to mid-season, like the real like low parts of the season where it's just super sad and you're getting real tired of doing all the games and
It's dark at 5 p.m.
yeah. And now it's like, oh, I can just go outside. Like I can just like take 5 minutes and just go sit outside and like breathe fresh air and be like, oh, that's that's
Life
like
has
that's
meaning again.
wait, what is that? Is that vitamin D? That's crazy. how,
Crazy, bro.
how about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing just dandy. For those of you who are watching on video, can see that I am actually outside right now. It is far too beautiful of a day to coop myself in my basement. And also, to be fair, my podcasting setup is not quite in its regular form as it is the off season right now. So I'm pretty mobile in what I've been doing with my setup, so I can go anywhere. And I choose my deck today. But enough about our personal lives because no one really cares about that. Let's get into all of the fun stuff that's going on. So Brady and I said we were gonna sit down and chat today. Trade happened today. Not the one that we thought. We'll get into that one. Taylor Hall collecting his first round picks like Infinity Stones to the Chicago Blackhawks. Might I add, he does have a modified no trade clause and still went to the Chicago Blackhawks. Very cool of him. Brady, what are your thoughts on that trade? Just as a quick refresher,
I
Hall
mean,
and Foligno, I know you have it pulled up for a couple of younger guys. Or actually, you know what? I can't lie to you and tell you I know you anything but Ian Mitchell. So I'll just let you get into it.
I don't know Ian Mitchell much either, but he's 24 and the other guy they got back, Alex Regula, is 19. No, 19,
Yeah.
22. Sorry, he's 22.
Remember him from the World Juniors back in the day?
Uh, actually, you know what? Actually, now that you say that, I do kind of remember that name.
Yeah.
Regardless, I don't think that these are going to be important. The main thing is the what the Blackhawks are acquiring on their end. Of course, Taylor Hall, as you said, still at $6 million, and the signing rights to Nick Foligno. I'm not sure what the whole Nick Foligno thing is about. Is Chicago looking to either flip him for someone, or to someone who might want to, try and sign him, but or maybe they're just looking to potentially bolster themselves. Like it's really interesting for Chicago because like are they just like kind of trying to pivot now that they have the they'll that now in a couple days they'll have the generational talent of Connor Bedard. Like are they trying to be competitive next year? Like what's the deal here? Like I don't know. I don't get
I
me
don't
wrong.
know.
I just don't. Maybe it's just because I don't know enough about Ian Mitchell or Alec Regula, but it doesn't seem like they really got much back for taking on that deal, right? Like there's no picks in here or anything like that. But then again, Connor Bedard needs someone to play with, and it's always good to start him off with someone who at one point was also very good. Maybe you can kind of talk to him about being the pressure of being a number one talent. Obviously, not exactly the same for Taylor Hall and Connor Bedard, but Taylor Hall is going to get his second chance to play with a generational talent. It didn't really work out the first time, but maybe it'll work out this time, and who knows? Maybe they could always flip him at the deadline next year. If he has a good season playing with Bedard, he is potentially still valuable, but very interesting trade here. But again, I don't know. It's somehow very interesting, but also I don't know. What does this really do?
Well, it's interesting to me in the sense that I don't know, maybe I'm just not following the right people, but I didn't hear a lot about Taylor Hall being moved before this actually broke, or like the 10 minutes before it broke when it's people started leaking it and whatever, right? So, the Nick Foligno piece, I'm wondering if they're just looking to replace the Jonathan Taves-esque with someone else old but less problematic. I don't know what the vibe is there, but so that part is whatever. I agree. It's kind of an add-on. Taylor Hall is just a really interesting choice, but I do really like that player. I just don't really know why Boston decided it was time to part with him. I'm sure that's not the last move that they're going to make, so maybe they're making room for a $6.25 million center from or whatever. Anyways,
Well, they've got a lot of guys. What I would guess here is that they wanted to re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi,
yeah,
and so
yeah, they like them.
naturally, that's probably where a chunk of that $6 million that was Hall's will probably end up. But now they've got like just under $11 million in cap space. It looks like they still have they still need to figure out who's going to play 1C and 2C.
Right.
Re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi. Hopefully, I would imagine they're trying to, but then again, he is also a UFA, so they're kind of losing time here to get that done. Jeremy Swayman needs a new contract, maybe with a different
Yeah.
team, maybe with a team up north here in the central.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
Who
Who knows?
knows? But I'm just saying we can talk about that later when we get into the rumblings, which there has been a lot of. But yeah, I think this is just a move on Boston's part to just free up some cap space, kind of similar to like the Max Pacioretty trade a year ago when he got moved to
Exactly.
Carolina, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's one of those trades where it's like it happened, and for those of us who aren't particularly caring about either of those two markets, it's kind of a nothing trade in the grand scheme of things, but that's kind of similar to the next one I want to talk about, which is the Ryan Johansen trade. Also a little bit of a nothing trade, but still kind of weird that it happened. I To me, it doesn't change my life, you know?
I actually disagree. I think this is one of the more interesting trades. Like,
Oh, it's interesting, but it's not life changing, you know? It's
yeah, that's fair. I mean, like, so just to be clear, Ryan Johansen 50% retained, so going over for only $4 million, over to the Colorado Avalanche.
Which is hilarious that he makes $8 million, but that's
Yeah, I
a
mean, hey,
story from 2017, so
he cashed in, and listen, I'm sure Pierre-Luc Dubois is looking at him going, hey, if that guy's making $8 million, then what am I going to get paid here? But he was traded for the rights to sign Alex Galchenyuk, which is essentially nothing because that guy has bounced around, all across the league, especially in the recent years. But
yeah.
looking at Johansson, like he is, about to enter his second last year of this $8 million deal. Again, getting him for $4 million, I really like this deal for Colorado. Like I'm not
Oh, it's
even,
a nice add-on, yeah.
but like
It makes them better in the grand scheme of things, for sure.
I mean, it's kind of a bit of a something to kind of replace the hole that Kadri left there when he left, and I honestly think it's a decent gamble. Like I'm not huge on Ryan Johansen, especially not in his recent years. But I remember when he was coming up in the league, and he was really turning heads for a while there. And even if we go back a couple seasons, did he not like score 40 goals like a couple seasons ago when the year when like Roman Yossi popped off and Duchesne
That
popped
was a
off?
weird year. That was a weird
Oh,
year.
I,
I
I looked it up. No, he did not. He scored 26 goals that year, I think. So, but
whatever.
regardless, I think that's a decent bet to make to go. Hey, if we surround him with a couple more pieces here, and insulate him, in that second spot, and then that way you give a little bit more room for Newhook to kind of push for the second centerman spot there. If Ryan Johansen ends up being your third centerman, I can't complain
Cooking with
about that
gas.
whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's like a really smart ad, and I remember I was listening to the 32 Thoughts podcast, and it seems like teams this year don't really like the free agent market, and so they're
Mhm.
kind of going. At least that's what Elliot was saying was they seem to be kind of being more interested in the trade market, and obviously we've heard all the rumblings. We've already had a bunch of trades, even though it doesn't feel like we have had them because it hasn't been anything crazy yet, but. Um, it's just really interesting, and I think this is a smart move because again, like who even would be available in the UFA market for centers right now, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. No, that's a good point. It's a nice piece of tidy business from Colorado, but it's not. I don't know. I think there are more exciting ones to talk about, and I think I'm gonna move to what is, to me, so far, the most exciting trade, which is the Sean Durzi trade. That sounds weird because it's Sean Durzi for a second. He's going to the desert. Congrats. But it's what that signifies, which is making moves, making room for you know who. So before we talk about you know who,
He who
thoughts.
shall not be named.
He who shall not be named. Yeah, frickin' chicken. Um, Sean Durzi. What do you think of that player? You like this move for Arizona, or what are your thoughts?
I think that this is a great move from Arizona. Like, I think what Arizona really needs to do right now, in order for them to actually, for everything to work out, obviously, the whole building stuff, that's all, that's a whole other story. But I think that what's really important is building up with a young team. Like, I think that they kind of need to take the, in quotes, Winnipeg Jets route of like drafting and developing and then weaponizing cap space until you can actually compete.
In theory.
In theory, of course. But like they've got a lot of young guys coming into this team. I mean, Dylan Gunther is going to be on their team next year, I'm sure. They still have, Clayton Keller, Bayard Hayton, Nick Schmaltz is a good player. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to be competing or for anything really there. I think that they're just taking a step towards making this team better. But like looking at their D pairs, like I like Yusuf Valimaki. I think he's a good D-man. I don't know if he is necessarily a top pair guy. I think Sean Durzi is a really good player, and he's still young. Can bring a lot of offense. Kind of fills in that spot that kind of Gostisbehere had there when he was their their power play guy. They don't really have a power play guy now that Chikrin's gone. So I think you can do a lot worse than having Valimaki, Durzi, JJ Moser, and Victor Soderstrom. A guy who should for years now we've heard he should be good. I think he was back in that draft when like. What was it? Liljegren was kind of, I think, was in that draft. So I think that that's kind of
I think that's the group. Yeah.
a good, goalpost to put around him. And so I think that right around now is when those players should be breaking into the league. So obviously I don't know much about his recent years, but I just remember he was a pretty highly touted prospect. And so I think that this is a good bet on a young decor that, if things work out in the future, like that can be, Soderstrom and Durzi can be the basis of a good decor moving forward. So like I really like that, and again, for the price of only a 2024 second round pick,
That's
like
exactly it.
that's an easy add. And then as you said, it kind of why would they trade a good young defenseman? Well, I mean, before we talk about that, the other thing was another thing that Friedman was talking about was apparently so the Kings seem to be a little bit worried about what Durzi might be able to command in an arbitration case. Because, I mean, this past year he was playing second power play. I can't remember exactly how many points he had. Let me bring that up here. But regardless, like, this is a good young player, and he needs to be paid. I mean, he had 38 points last year. Again, second power play, could potentially be a first power play guy soon. He's only been in the league for 2 years, so, like, this is a player on the come up, and I don't think that they were able to pay him, especially when they're looking around at putting their cap space towards someone else. Is it time to talk about it, Lyss?
I think it might have to be.
All right. Okay. So I just want your opinion here first and foremost before we talk about any sort of potential return, before we talk about the trade. I just want how are you feeling as a PLD stan, but also a Winnipeg Jets fan who kind of realizes that something needs to be done here? How are you doing today, Lyss?
Well, okay, here's the thing. I will appreciate the fact that he's been a little bitch for quite some time because I've had time to kind of come to grips with it. If this was being thrown on me right now, I'd be like, oh my gosh. But at this point, I'm kind of just waiting for it to happen, right? Like, it's coming. It is what it is. It sucks a lot, but show business, not show friends. Who really cares what we're doing here? Like, he's going to go play where he wants to play. He's, been a good enough player that he can sort of command a little bit of RFA, leniency here from the team and say, I'm not playing with you. I'd like to go somewhere where I will. If he's being vocal about how he won't sign in a lot of places, that kind of gives him essentially a modified no trade clause, right? Because people aren't going to want him if they know they're going to have the same situation in a couple of years. So all that's to say, for as a Jets fan, you said we're not going to talk about returns, and I am going to talk about it just for a brief
Well,
second.
no,
Where right
I just
now,
meant like we can
no,
get into it. But
before we like dive into it, I will say right now when it comes to the returns, like I'm just kind of comparing options as opposed to comparing like, oh, is PLD worth more than XYZ? Like honestly, I don't care at this point because it's like we don't even have him at all, right? So I'm just comparing the options of what, because it's not like the alternative is keeping him. That's not even on the table at this point.
Yeah.
So just kind of comparing what the options are out there. I'm glad to see that in some of the speculated returns that, it's not a pile of pucks and some dog shit.
It's
Like it's actually some real stuff out
it's
there.
not just
So
Josh Anderson.
and Dvorak and yeah, whatever.
And a second.
So yeah, so definitely gonna be some exciting stuff. I will say the last 24 hours have changed things. I'd say 2 days ago, things were looking pretty sure, but now we're hearing that, Ottawa is back in on this and that Brisson hasn't even really talked to LA. Couple of weird things. So I'm really interested to see how this plays out. But as a Pierre-Luc Dubois fan, sucks because I don't want to see my favorite player leave, is great because I'm going to get a lot of my favorite players clearance jerseys. And as a Jets fan, sucks because I really don't want to see Patrick Laine being turned into, some random washed up prospect that wasn't developed properly by the Kings, and also good in the sense that we might get more than we thought we were. So that's kind of my general thoughts across the board.
Yeah, and I don't think it will turn into this, but yeah, I think all Jets fans, before we started hearing the potential packages here, I think we were all scared of having that Jordan Eberle to Ryan Strome to Ryan Spooner downgrade process from Patrick Laine to Dubois to Josh Anderson or whoever that
Oh my God.
Montreal wants to just give us, because hey, at least they're giving us something. They didn't have to give us anything.
Pierre-Luc was just going to go there for free agency and take a super big hometown discount, and nothing matters.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no other teams in this league that like any players would want to play for. But thank God, I will say thank you to Pat Brisson and Pierre-Luc Dubois for at least opening the conversation to be like, hey, it's not just Montreal. I would go elsewhere. Which I also think it serves him well too, because if we end up in the case where he is signing in Montreal, they could probably just use that as leverage to just be like, well, you want to come here, so you're going to sign for $6 million or, like that. So obviously it is in his best interest to have other teams, be competing for him and this and that, because then, if you're going to make a sizable investment trade wise, to getting this player, you're going to have to sign him to at least money that's kind of in the ballpark of what he wants. Right. So thank you to him for that. I think now let's kind of talk about where we are at with this, because we've heard a lot of conflicting reports. The other day, I was under the assumption, and under the pretenses based on people who I've spoken to and the reports that were out on Twitter, that this was essentially a done deal, and all that was left to be done was negotiating a contract between Pierre-Luc Dubois or Pat Brisson and I guess Rob Blake and the Kings. And so I know that David Pagnotta has, of the fourth line, who can be not always on it, but can also be on it a lot. He has said that it is essentially done and they're just negotiating contracts right now. And then we also have Elliott being like, I'm under the, I am currently under the assumption / what I know is that the Jets never gave up any sort of negotiating rights, not negotiating rights, but they never gave permission in order for him to speak to the Kings. So we're kind of getting conflicting reports here, but at very least we do kind of generally know what the package is probably going to look like. It is probably going to be Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I believe Jansen Harkins will be a part of the deal.
LOL.
Which, good for him. I actually am happy because Jansen Harkins is a player who I think should be in the NHL to a certain degree. I think he can be a contributing member, and I think it's maybe time for him to get the Mikey Eyssimont treatment and be kind of let off the leash and given an opportunity to go play elsewhere. And I think he'll be decent. He'll be a almost replaceable NHL player, but just slightly above it. But
what praise! Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult to get into the league to start with, but
yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Appreciate it. But going back to the return, we've been sitting here hoping it's Byfield, hoping it's this guy, hoping it's that guy. But if it wasn't going to be Byfield, we were all sitting here going, I hope it's Gabe Vilardi. And it seems to be Gabe Vilardi will likely be the centerpiece of what is coming back to the Jets, along with probably Alex Iafallo. I wouldn't rule out Victor Arvidsson either. I think those two guys are kind of in
Mhm.
the same boats of, having to send Cap back to the Jets,
Yeah.
and also the Jets being like, we want a guy who can play in the roster,
Yep.
But all I'll say is that Vilardi and IFL have played together and have had good results together, and yeah, so that's exciting that the Jets are probably going to get something decent back. Apparently, there might be a third young player involved as well too. But that, again, like I said, we're all just kind of speculating at this point off of what we've kind of heard. So it's kind of difficult to, really figure out what's going on here. But before we move on from this, I just want your opinion here, because I think at this point we can probably discern that the Jets have not given the Kings permission to speak with Dubois, and
Yeah, I don't think so.
they are currently trying to essentially go, hey, this is the Kings offer, and we're gonna take it if no one else steps up to the plate. We have seen that Montreal apparently has stepped back up to the plate to, start negotiating again. Um,
Whatever.
we'll see if they want to give up Kirby
It's not
Dach, because I
happening.
think that that's going to be the piece that the Jets want. Which I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that
I don't
personally.
want Kirby Doc.
I'm not a huge Kirby Dach fan, but I could be swayed into saying he's better than probably I thought. Um,
Eh.
but my main question to you is: do you think that the Jets are going to fuck this up? Like,
Uh,
do you think they're gonna do the we have more leverage than we actually do here, and we're gonna try and play these teams off each other until one of
oh
them just
God.
says, "Fuck off, we're not doing this," and then the other team goes, "Well, if they're not doing this, we're lowering our offer because you didn't take our
Yeah.
offer when we first offered it."
I don't think they will because they know that the backup option is not keeping Dubois. It's losing him for way less. Like I think that's always the thing is when you have these bargaining wars, bidding wars. Jesus Christ. When you have these bidding wars, right, where you're bidding and you're bidding and you're trying to see how high they'll go, you're a little bit less risk averse when you know that the option is if they both pull out, you just keep the guy and it is what it is. That's not even on the table right now. Is there's no keeping the guy. So I
Yeah,
don't think they're gonna screw it up. However, I will say the more time I've had to sit and ponder this whole Iafallo and Velarde thing, the more stressed I've become because these are two good players. I don't want two good players for Pierre-Luc Dubois because it's just you need to rebuild this team when you lose all of your most important pieces, and they're not gonna rebuild them if they take Gabe Vilardi and Alex Iafallo. So I'm a little bit stressed about that in that capacity, and I'm wondering if it's gonna make them wanna keep Mark Scheifele. I'm wondering if it's gonna make them I don't
you,
know, try and sell off some pieces, and last thing I will say is I also don't think that LA develops their prospects very well at all.
no,
I think they've had some issues with that in the past, so, I do think that getting well, Iafallo and Velarde are a bit different. Velarde in particular, though, getting him or someone like, Turcotte or Byfield or who's the stud? What's Brant Clark? Um
Brant Clark. There's no way they're
but
giving up
there's
Brant
no
Clark
way.
though.
No, I know. But anyways, all that's to say, Brant Clark less so because he's had less time in their particular system and farm system. I think we could be getting better players than are advertised right now because I don't think they've had enough time to develop properly in a good system. So there could be even more upside there than we think, which is very exciting. But that means no rebuild. So it's kind of wishy-washy. It'll be interesting, but all that's to say, I'm a business major, and at the heart of business major, you're all about asset maximization. So getting two really good players for one really good player, I am okay with.
Yeah,
That's kind of my whole bit.
yeah, you hit the nail on the head exactly with the little bits of fear I have with this. I don't think that I'm not worried about Gabe Vilardi. He's only 23 at this point, and so I think that he fits the next window of the Jets when
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
26,
totally.
27, and Perfetti is what, I guess 24, I think at that point. I don't know. Like, whatever. Point
Yeah, I
is
don't know.
point is I completely agree with you. I tweeted this just the other day that I am just very worried that the Jets are going to see themselves and convince themselves into not trading Scheifele when they should. Um,
Yeah.
I completely understand the reasoning why they might want to keep him until the start of the season, because I do think that there is a level of like reputation, or I guess should we be talking about this? Do we just want to talk about Hellebuyck and Shifley now quickly, and then we can move on, or
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
Shifley now, because like
sure.
I think that because the thing is, it's just like getting Iafallo back is great because at the end of the day, acquiring good players means you can trade away good players and get assets back for them.
Yeah,
But he is 29 years old. I see him, if the Jets, let's just say trade Dubois, they get Velarde and Iafallo and whoever the frick else out of here. They trade Hellebuyck because that's inevitable. That is going to happen this offseason, 100%. Like how good of a team is this really? And what I would say is they are just good enough for the Jets to go, okay, well, we're gonna keep Shifley till the start of the season because we're not really getting the offers we want from him because his reputation isn't really that great right now, and teams think they can get a bargain for him. So let's keep him until the middle of the season. Let him have a couple, month or two to come out and really show himself. It's his contract year, so he's going to be extra motivated to really showcase himself for other teams. And then you get halfway through the year, you get 2/3 through the year, and the Jets look at themselves and they're sitting in like 9th place in the West. And they're going, with the right, we could sell off here. We could also make playoffs. We're kind of close. I mean, obviously, this all depends on the Jets getting somewhat of a decent, okay goalie back that can, at least be serviceable.
sure.
And I could see them, unfortunately, just taking that and kind of not really, capitalizing on what they have in Shifley to potentially trade him at the deadline to a team that needs a scoring punch at a really good contract. Again, if you take him at 50%, like that, Shifley at 50% for like 3 point whatever,
Yeah, that's stupid.
is a great trade or addition for any team at the deadline, right?
He's great at 6 million, frick. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, frick. Thanks.
oh, I didn't even mean to do that.
I know. But yeah, so it's just I just get a little bit worried because in my mind, the best way that you could do this is you could recoup assets. Obviously, I think Gabe Velarde is a great centerpiece to this trade. I think if you could somehow, get Turcotte in there, I'm not really sold on the fact that he is going to be good or anything like that, but at least it's an option to try because he is young.
I have more optimism in him. I think he just needs to go somewhere else.
That's
I
fair.
think pretty much everyone in LA needs to go somewhere else.
I think that is somewhat fair. I somewhat agree to that. But yeah, I just look at this and I see them, if they get Iafallo back, I see them adding him on and as part of a the part of this team going forward, and it's not like another guy you can get assets for, because really the best thing the Jets could do is just sell and then sell on top of selling, right? And then do whatever you can, because even if you do get draft picks back for those guys, like you can use those draft picks then in the next year or two when you are starting to come up, when your younger players are starting to get better, and you can use those pieces to trade for something that is now. Like it doesn't need to be this like trading for draft picks doesn't always need to be a like, we're trading for this so that we can pick a guy who might be good for us in 4 years, right?
No, it's just an asset that you can service like anything else.
Exactly. So yeah, so I don't know. It's just really interesting to see what the Jets are going to do here. Obviously, we're Jets fans, so we're going to dive into it a little bit further than usual. But let's take a step back and do we want to do Hellebuyck, or do we want to do? I mean, I don't really have much to say on Hellebuyck, so maybe we can get that out of the way.
No, I don't have a ton to say on Hellebuyck. Just the fact that I hope Aiden Hill didn't screw this up for the Jets. And
Okay.
I hope Darcy Kemper didn't screw this up for the Jets either, right? Because we see this all the time where the NHL follows like a 2 to 3 year, even closer to 1 to 2 year follow suit of carbon copying the last Stanley Cup champ, or just overcorrecting on something that team had. Like the way that players that have played just, sniffed the Tampa Bay Lightning have gone for such high returns because they know how to win or whatever that bullshit is, right? Like, so the last 2 goaltenders that have won the Stanley Cup not being elite is bad for the Connor Hellebuyck camp, and it worries me. My mind is always of, you need a good goalie to win the Stanley Cup, and you need a good goalie to play like a great goalie. And if you bring in a great goalie, they have a higher percentage chance of playing like a great goalie. And that's the math of how someone like Connor Hellebuyck is more likely to win you a Stanley Cup than someone like Martin Jones or whatever you want to say. Not that Martin Jones can't go on a heater. But if you look at track records, he's much less likely to go on a heater.
Mhm.
That's just, it is what it is. Adin Hill went on a little bit of a heater. Darcy Kemper went on a fine enough heater. Nothing really to write home about, but enough that it, helped their team and it didn't hurt their team. And now I'm worried that Connor Hellebuyck is going to be less valuable than he would have been when Vasilevsky was winning the Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cups. I don't know.
Yeah, I and also I guess we should mention Adin Hill did get re-signed. I'm trying to find it here.
Congrats,
I
King.
think
Get
it
your
was
bag.
like 4 mil
Yeah.
times 2, I think. Something like that. Let me just bring it up here very quickly. We'll just mention it. Oh my god, why is Cat Friendly doing this? This is terrible podcasting. I'm so sorry, everyone.
What are you looking for?
The Hill contract. I can't. Why isn't it showing for me?
I don't recall.
Anyways, point is, it was like 4. I think it was 4.5 times 2. But all I wanted to say on this was, which is really funny, is man, what a terrible Stanley Cup final and result for Winnipeg Jets fans, for fans like us. Also, I guess this is our first show since the end of the cup. Congrats Vegas, good job. Your fan base was really hard done by for many years. And
Okay,
I'm very glad.
Retire that narrative. I don't care
It's
that their fans haven't suffered. I don't
No,
care.
I know. It's just funny. It's just funny to say.
It is.
But coming back, like the fact that the Adin Hill thing sucks because now again you're potentially lowering the value you can get back for Hellebuyck, as you said. But on top of that too, the fucking the fact that it was Florida, of all teams, that went all the way, again, the team that just snuck in, it's the two narratives that are bad for the Jets right now, which is
Bubble teams can win.
You just
all you need to do is get it. Get in.
You just need to get in. You never know what can happen. And then also, you don't need a great goalie. So one, you're lowering the return for the Jets. You're two, potentially, coaxing fans into believing that anything can happen as long as you just get in, which is, very rare. It doesn't happen. Also, I hate to break it to you, the Panthers didn't win. So
they didn't win.
So
they didn't win.
and it took a Herculean effort by Bobrovsky and Tkachuk to even get them there. So, absolutely insane and not good for Jets fans and not good for the people who want a bit of a rebuild to happen here. But anyways, regardless, I think that Hellebuyck to New Jersey, before that even came out, I think that was the place that I kept looking. I remember doing an armchair GM a couple weeks back, and it just made sense to send him there and get back either one of Vanacek and Schmid, along with some sort of prospect. If he signs on for like a sign-in trade, like that's great, and you could probably pry maybe like an Alexander Holtz out of there, someone who's young and decent. Because at this point, like the Devils' window is now in the next few years ahead of them, so this would be like a great trade for them. I would love to see it. I think that would be a lot of fun personally, because that team is young and fun and interesting. So I would love to see that and I would love to see Connor Hellebuyck potentially get a go on a bit of a run with a decent team and a team that has their best in front of them and not behind them. But yeah, so I guess that's really all I have to say on Hellebuyck. But speaking of the Devils, we had a little trade here that involved the Devils. This was a little bit back a couple weeks ago. I'm sure you guys probably saw it, but I don't have much to say here. A 2023 third-round pick, which ends up being Calgary's pick, and it is number 80 in the upcoming draft here in a couple days. Traded for Damon Severson over to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who then extended him for $6.25 mil over 8 years. Maybe do we want to talk about this in conjunction with the other Columbus trade, or do you like?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that it's an interesting little move, but I never know what Columbus is up to. They're so weird. I will say also, I must acknowledge, I have this huge gap where I don't know what NHL players look like. I could honestly tell you a decent amount about David Severson as a player, but they posted about him. Guys, David Severson is really handsome. So if you're looking for a white boy of the month, he's a good choice. He's a handsome fella. So
Did Rachel Dory pay you to say this?
No, but she agreed with me. I asked her, I was like, is he problematic? And she's like, no, he slays. He could be your
Yeah,
white boy of the month. I was like, okay,
she
thank you.
she pumps his tires all the time on Staff and Graph.
Excellent.
That's her boy.
We are
Um,
we are morphing into one. It's fine. Um, but Columbus is a team that, agree or disagree with their moves and how good they are. They
they're
do stuff.
I was gonna say they're doing something.
They do
Do you
things.
want me to mention the other trades so we can just kind of talk about it
Yeah,
as a whole?
yeah. The
So
three-way.
the three, ooh, don't say it
Ugh.
like that.
No, it's because it's
um,
Ivan Provorov, so it's funny.
yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. So we're not going to talk about Ivan Provorov, the person. We're just going to talk Ivan Provorov, the hockey player, today because we've already done our spiel on him. And go have a look at that. I
He
think.
sucks. Just gotta add that, then we
Yeah,
can move on.
that's the main thing. But anyways, Columbus Blue Jackets, they do acquire Ivan Provorov from the Philadelphia Flyers, with 30% retained by, I believe, the Kings. I think the Kings are retaining the 30%. I could be wrong, but it
Yeah.
does mention here that he is going through. Like he's getting traded to the Kings, and then the retaining is happening there. It does say from LA. Okay, yes. So basically he's being traded at 4.725 mil. You know, we'll get to him and we'll talk about that in a minute. The Los Angeles Kings, they acquire Kevin Connaughton, an AHL or out of the lineup guy. They also acquire Hayden Hodgson, who I don't know much about, but it looks like he does not have a contract and is in the AHL at the moment. And why would LA do this? They're retaining, and they're not really getting anyone back. Well, it's because they actually dished off Cal Peterson and his monster contract that bit them in the ass so quickly. He is signed to $5 million, per year for this year and next. This year coming up and next year after that. So they get out from under him, thank God, because that he turned into a pumpkin the second he signed that. The Flyers also will be acquiring Sean Walker at 2.65. Helge Grans, who I don't know much about, a 2024 second round pick from LA, but then they're also getting from Columbus a 2023 first round pick. So this year, the 22nd pick in the draft that's in a couple days, we also have a 2024 second round pick from Columbus, which is conditional, which is basically Columbus gets to choose if it's the 2024 or the 2025 second round pick based on how the 2024 first round goes. They get to decide right after that. So basically, all I have to say here, the Flyers, wow, tidy work, Daniel Briere, getting a bigot
Yup.
out of your team and getting, a bit of a cap dump, but getting paid very handsomely. Again, a first round pick this year, and this year's draft is very good, at least at the top
And Sean
end.
Walker's kind of good.
Yeah, Sean Walker is
Like,
actually a pretty decent defenseman, is he not?
yeah,
Right?
I think so. Yeah. No, I think this is gonna be the summer of Danny Briere doing stuff. Like, I really do. And we could probably talk about a couple other things. And you're right. Like, it's a nice piece of work, but there were a couple of other almost trades that happened with Philly. Again, if in the spirit of getting bigots off your team, sounds like a trade to get Tony DeAngelo off of their team was blocked. Don't know how those really work, to be
Well,
honest with you. What's the tea there?
before we get into that, I just want to talk just a touch on Columbus very quickly here because
Okay, okay.
at this point they have acquired two defensemen who realistically are probably top four defensemen. I would say for both of them. I mean, Provorov has some critics, I would say, but all I know is that Damon Severson is liked, I believe, by the computer boys. And now we get this weird thing where Columbus has bought for the past 2 years. Like they bought two defensemen this year, like I said. They bought obviously Johnny Gaudreau the year before. They have Patrick Laine they've gotten in their system here. And they're kind of at this weird little crossroads. And I look at this team and I'm curious what you think, Lyss. Where do you see this team? Because I think another important distinction to make here is that it's not just the players that they acquired, in this trade versus last year's team and adding those two guys, but they're also going to be adding a top 3 pick here, which it more or less, I would guess, is probably going to be Leo Carlson. Might be Adam Fantilli if he drops. I doubt they would take Michkov because I think they just want a center, and also they want a player that they know will come here sooner than later. Um, and I don't know. I don't know how to feel about Columbus. Like, are they making moves to potentially be, a playoff team? Again, a couple of years ago, they weren't terrible. They were okay. Then they add Goudreau, and they get even worse somehow. Uh,
Yeah.
and they have a new coach. Who's signed on for their coach this year? Don't they?
No, they don't have one yet. It's probably Mike Babcock, remember?
Oh, it is. No, it is Mike Babcock.
Can't
That is
they can't
confirmed.
announce it or something.
I'm pretty sure he's was that not?
No, because there's something about they can't announce it until like July or something like that. I don't know. Um, I will tell you how I feel about Columbus, and it's that every single move that they've made, I've liked a bit, but it's slightly off. You know, it's like if Johnny Gaudreau was 3 years younger, I would love it. If like Cole Sillinger and Ken Johnson were like a year older, I'd be like, all right, this is cool. Like they just everything seems like a little bit off where it needs to be. Like getting rid of Seth Jones, great. Zach Werenski needs to be healthy. That's not their fault. Like everything just seems to be not quite exactly lining up for them the way they wanted to. I don't really know what their direction is. I don't think they should be as bad as they were last year, but I also thought last year they wouldn't have been as bad as they were. So I really don't know what's going on there. I think a couple of the players they have on the up and up in particular, super high on Kent Johnson.
Oh
I
yeah.
think Cole Sillinger is going to be cool. Yegor Chinakov's a stud. I think he's awesome. Patrick Laine with the right players still has a ton of upside. Like I think there's room for that team to be fun, and I think, getting rid of Korpisalo, is that the one they got rid of, or was it Merzlikins?
No,
I honestly don't remember.
it was Corpusalo. Corpusalo went to the Kings.
Was a nice, like, getting rid of one of those guys was like a good call. Like I think they've done a couple of things to put them in the right direction, but there's just something, the vibes just aren't there. Do you know what I mean? And saying that it's just a little bit, they're
It's
a good idea, but I don't know.
I think they're trending in the right direction. Like I'm glad that you pointed out some of the younger guys because like Kent Johnson, man, that
Stud.
absolute
Stud.
stud. Like I really like that player. Johnny Gaudreau is still a very good player. Maybe not his best year, but it is what it is. Kind of tough when Boone Jenner's your centerman. Um, but like yeah, like looking at them right now, like let's just look at the first two lines here. It's like Johnny Gaudreau, Boone Jenner, Patrick Laine, Kent Johnson, Jack Rosvick, Kirill Marchenko. Again, Cole.
Oh,
That's
Marchenko honestly had such a good year too.
yeah, exactly. And Cole Sillinger again. I would imagine Cole Sillinger can probably push Rosvick down there. And then also like I strongly believe that if they get Leo Carlson, if they get any of these guys, they may or may not be playing next. I believe they would probably actually play, like they would be able to crack this roster. Leo Carlson looks really, really good. I'm mostly
But
focusing on him because that seems to be the guy.
yeah. But
He
Adam Fantilli, I don't see that happening, but he's not playing in the NHL next year, is he?
I can't remember. Did he? I think he
He's
might.
committed
Yeah, I
back to
think he's committed.
college.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, hey, if it's between that and playing for the Ducks, I mean, I like the Ducks, but there's no need to rush him there. Whereas there maybe is a little bit more of a reason for Columbus here to potentially, do that. So I think Fantilli fits very well with the Ducks, and so I think naturally Carlson will be available here at 3. And I would imagine that they'll take him over Will Smith over Matvey Michkov just because of
Yeah.
the uncertainty there. And like again, let's review those top two lines again. It's Johnny Gaudreau, Leo Carlson potentially, Patrick Laine, who, and again, Leo Carlson is apparently like a really good playmaker. His comparisons have been kind of like Nick Backstrom, for example. And it's like, wow, ooh, you're telling me Nick Backstrom and Patrick Laine, or Nick Backstrom
That's
comparable and Patrick Laine?
that's
Uh,
Walmart, Backstrom, and Ovechkin.
exactly. But yeah, and so again, I'm really high on Kent Johnson. And then when you look at their D pairs, like as long as Werenski's healthy next year, Werenski with Severson is a good top pair. Ivan Provorov, again, fuck that guy, but him with Andrew Peeke. Andrew Peake's a pretty good defenseman as well too.
Yeah.
And then Eric Goodmanson. Every team's got to have their one guy. And
Yeah.
Adam Boqvist, who is like a good
I'm an Adam Boqvist apologist for sure.
a good guy who should be again as the years go on continuing to get better. So I don't know where his ceiling is, but again, I think that's a team that's trending in the right direction, and so it'll be really interesting to see how this team comes out next year.
But it's also not that different than the team they
Exactly.
iced this year that ended 3rd last or 2nd last in the league or whatever it was. So,
Yeah, but again, I think Werenski is a big loss last year.
yeah,
So
yeah, okay, that's fair. And
so
they have goaltending gaps for sure too. So,
yeah,
you know, it's interesting, and I am a Columbus Blue Jackets fan. Like, I do quite like them as a team, and so I am rooting for their success, especially in that Metropolitan Division. That's tough. So it'll be really interesting to see, and I hope, they have so much potential to be a very exciting team for years to come. So
absolutely. Okay, let's move on to as we were talking about Philly a little bit. The another deal that is in the works but has not gone through. Because this one a little bit different because because a player just said no, I'm not doing that. There's basically a deal that's been set out for Kevin Hayes to be going to the Blues. I almost forgot there. Jeez. Kevin Hayes going over to the Blues. We don't really know exactly what the rest of the package is, but what has been kind of rumored around it has been something along the lines of Kevin Hayes as well as Travis Sanheim going over to the Blues for Torrey Krug and I believe a first. Um, Again, the details haven't really leaked for this trade here, and I've there's just been a lot of speculation as to who it was could be. Although we do know 100% that Torrey Krug was the player who nixed this deal. My first question is, how do you get to a point where you have a deal completely in place and you have not asked your one of the players if they would be willing to go there even to start with? Like you're
yeah,
just
I
setting out
don't know.
work that like you don't need to do. Like this is obviously very different, but like when I've played like fantasy hockey with my friends and I'm like, "Hey,
Oh,
I
the
I
comparables.
I want to trade for this guy." Like I will literally just be like, "Would you even consider a trade around this type of thing?" I'm not even going like I'll work on it. This isn't my offer to you, but would you be even open to something similar to this? And if they just say no, then it's like, okay, cool. I don't have to spend the next 15 minutes of my life crafting a wonderful trade and a way to fuck one of my friends over. Um, but yeah, so like this is a really weird trade that it hadn't gone through. Again, if the trade was Hayes Sanheim for Krug in a first, how do you feel about that? Like what are your thoughts regarding that trade?
I don't know. I mostly because both of these teams are kind of nothing team. I keep saying this. I'm just dunking on these people. St. Louis is in a weird situation where they sort of just narrowly avoided a rebuild where they're like, actually, let's just move a couple things around and now we're in okay shape. And so they could go in any direction now. It's not like they have to go full rebuild. Um, and it's not like they have to, it's like they have everything at stake right now either. Like they're kind of a team that could go either way, but bringing in Sanheim and Hayes to me means we're going to be good now. And on the other hand, for Philly, it's a team coming out of a rebuild. Obviously, we talk about that, but Danny Breer's in a weird situation where he's inherited essentially a disaster of a team. And he's having to manage a lot of moves that weren't his to make, right? He's jumping into the middle of a chess game that's already halfway done. So I don't know if he thinks that, Krug is going to fill the hole of Provorov and then that's going to help that decor propel a little bit. Or I don't really know what exactly the move is there. I understand a first is a great asset. Um, so you could flip that if you want to, but like Torrey Krug is not a young defenseman either. So I'm just unsure. I don't really understand it.
Yeah, I think that this is would if this was the trade and if this went through, I would be once again applauding Danny Briere. I think this is a great trade for the Flyers if this would have went through because okay, let's just look at it from what they're getting back. A first, great. That is what the Flyers need right now. They need to rebuild. That is exactly one of the things that you would want. Getting a first for, I don't think that Hayes or Sanheim you could get a first for. And together, again, I think that quality for picks is also very, important. Obviously, quantity is good too, but I think that getting a first is always better than getting,
Oh yeah.
obviously the other models will say getting it 2 seconds is better than a first, and getting a first and a third is better than, anyways, regardless, this is in a vacuum, I think would be a good trade for Philly, because then you can also still move Krug. So, and obviously in this case here, he would want to. And one of the things they were saying was that apparently the Flyers were looking to find to just flip Krug immediately so that he would agree to the trade. Obviously that
Right,
never,
yeah, I saw that too, yeah.
yeah, obviously that never really came up and worked out. But and looking at the players they're getting rid of, like Kevin Hayes does not fit with that team. Again, you want to be bad, and he's a second line center, third line center on a good team. Like that's a great guy to get out from under. Then you don't have to pay him the money. That's great. Sanheim is a very good defenseman, and I know that there's been a lot of talk around here in Winnipeg, and actually there were some rumors that Winnipeg was kicking tires on him. Again, it's one of those things where what I'm about to say for Winnipeg also would apply to the Flyers, because they are both not in contending windows right now. But Sanheim is what, like 20?
29?
No. He's younger than that. He's
Yeah?
oh yeah, he's like a year older than me. Yeah, he's 27.
What?
He's
Oh,
he's
okay, that's
27.
2 years off. Okay,
Sorry,
whatever.
for some reason my brain was like he's 24. I'm just like, no, he's not. He's 27. So for Winnipeg, if because again, I'm only mentioning this because obviously we're Jets fans, and there were at least some rumors that the Jets were kicking tires on him. I think that getting him is a good ad. Getting good players is always good. It goes back to, though, what I was saying before, is that it just doesn't really fit the window right now. Like, and especially for the Flyers, it does not fit the window to have this player. The sooner you can trade this guy, the younger he is, the more he has still on his deal left, the more control a team has, the more value he has in a trade. So this is a totally a fantastic idea, I think, for the Flyers to try and move this guy and get something back for him. And again, for the Winnipeg side of things, I like Travis Sanheim. I would love for him to be on my team if my team was going for it. A couple years ago, I wanted him on my team. Right now, I look at him and I go, unless you're flipping him for something else, he doesn't fit the Jets window right now. By the time the Jets are going to be good, he's going to be 30 something, and probably needing a new deal. So that's not it doesn't really fit. And so I think that's smart for the Flyers to be trying to move on from him.
Agreed.
What else really here? I guess just talk about Wheeler, or what? What are you thinking?
Yeah. I mean,
Just
I think
touch
that
on it, I
kind of
guess.
covers up the kind of most of what we wanted to cover was all that trade / agency rights and all that goodness. But Oliver Ekman-Larsson got bought out.
Oh, right.
So that was hilarious. So need to mention that. Blake Wheeler's probably also going to get bought out. Also hilarious, with a question mark and an asterisk, with a 30,000 word essay about Blake Wheeler, because I could talk about that player for hours. So I won't, but R.I.P. King.
Yeah. Basically, the main point is Wheeler will not play for the Jets next year, which I think it's a good thing. I think team-wise, culture-wise, good to move him out. Probably should have happened a year ago.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, I would hope the Jets can find some sort of value and trade him for something, or at least just trade him for nothing, because then and retain him, obviously 50% of his salary, because then you're only paying him 4 point whatever for
4.125.
I think so, yeah. For like 1 year, instead of paying him, was it like 2.9, I want to say it was, for 2 years. Yeah, like all I remember is it was like
2.75, I think.
I think it was like it was 5.3 or something was the total amount that the Jets would be paying them.
Okay.
So it would be actually better for the Jets. Like, theoretically, a team could come to them and be like, we will take Wheeler off of your hands if you retain 50% and you add a 7th round pick. And the Jets might actually consider that, because then they get to save, what is it, like 750 grand, 100, like $1 million. I don't know.
Whatever.
Probably like $1 million that they wouldn't have to pay him. So it makes sense. But regardless, lots of changes are on the way for the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, we can't help but talk about them, because you know who you're listening to.
We are who we are.
We are who we are. We're not going to deny it. But I think we're gonna probably wrap up there. Unless there's
Yeah.
anything else that you wanted to add on
I'm
here.
sure we'll jump on in the next couple days. Probably have a couple more frequent episodes over the next week or two, just because of draft and all the fun stuff that happens during the draft. As well as free agent frenzy happening just a few days later, the impending Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, question marks around Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, like those things in particular. Even if we weren't Jets fans, moving on from 3 core players in a season for a team is something worth talking about. So, we will definitely have much to say in the coming little bit. We'll also probably keep an eye on Calgary. Don't really know what's going on there, but they have a couple of
Oh
players who might
God.
be on the move as well. I do feel for them. They're kind of in a Winnipeg Jets situation where players are like, wait, we can just be a bitch and our team will trade us. Sounds good. Thank you, Pierre-Luc Dubois, for paving the way for me. I will do that also. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them and a couple other teams. And I mean, with Severson and with Provorov and with Taylor Hall, lots of players are moving right now that weren't guaranteed moves the same way that players like Dubois and Hellebuyck are. So it's going to be really exciting to see what happens in the next little bit. I hope we get some dramatic trades on draft day. Those are always the most fun when someone comes up to the front and is like, "We have a trade." It's like, yeah. So can't wait for that on Wednesday.
Lots,
So
lots of fun coming from out from Nashville. Also, the awards are going on as we speak right now. Who won? Who do you think won Rookie of the Year?
if it's not Matty Beniers, I'm going and setting the town of Nashville on fire.
It was Matty Beniers.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's the main one. Connor McDavid won the Ted Lindsay again.
Color me shocked.
As he should.
Yeah.
Anything else here? I think that's all. Oh, and
I just want to say, Twitter is all like complaining about the NHL's posting about all the country music artists who are there, and all of these Canadian hockey fans are like, I don't know who that is, and they're like artists that have like millions and millions and tens of millions of streams on Spotify. It's like it doesn't matter if you don't know who they are, that's okay, but having them performing at the NHL awards is actually quite good. So
absolutely, and
play.
it's like why you don't know them because they don't play them in commercials on TSN. Uh, who is that? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's one guy who's in commercials all the time. They just have
I
like,
want to say
is it
the
Josh?
Arkells.
No, it's Josh Ross. I think is
Josh
his name.
Ross. Oh, he
Yeah,
opened for Nickelback.
I know. I was there. I actually met
Oh,
him. I met
nice.
him, but
Oh,
yeah,
weird.
it was very funny. But
Okay.
but I was just like listening to him, like, is this the guy who's on TSN all the time?
That's
And
really
the person
funny.
I was with
No,
was just like,
TSN, I
yeah,
feel like signed some contract with him or something because he was part of that CFL lineup, which again, CFL Grey Cup halftime show last year was star studded. It was Florida Georgia Line and Jordan Davis, who are huge, huge, huge country artists. Or not Florida Georgia Line, sorry, it was Tyler Hubbard. Massive country artist, and Josh Ross. And I was like, what? Like that's so random. I'm a huge country music fan, so like I know who these people are. But if I don't expect people who aren't country music fans to know who they are. But that's a huge subset of sports fans who would die for college football that you could tap into if they're following the right people at the right time. So just saying, it's not bad.
hell yeah. But with that, we're gonna leave you there. Again, we will be back probably pretty soon. As soon as a Pierre-Luc Dubois trade rolls in or any other Jets trade in comes in, we'll probably be recording at the quickest moment, at the soonest possible moment, at a moment's notice. Jesus, what am I even saying? Uh, anyways, but we will be back. Lots of stuff, lots of news will be coming your guys' way. We'll be here to chat about it. Thank you
Wait,
all.
stop.
What?
Stop.
What?
Connor Bedard won the McGuire Award of Excellence. He's not even in the
The
NHL.
who? The who now?
The Award of Excellence. It's the okay, hold on. Let me find
Award to the candidate who best exemplifies commitment to excellence through strength of character, competitiveness, and athleticism.
congrats non-NHLer Connor Bedard.
Clearly, they just heard him be like, when they were asking him after winning the gold medal, being like, "What does it mean to you to have set a record?" And he's like, "Oh, this is about me and my team. We won gold."
Yeah,
which
that's
is
what
like,
won him
which
the
also
award.
is like the most obvious fucking thing to say as a hockey player, and
Right.
also is like that is
Right.
peak hockey player to be like, it's not about me, it's about the team. But regardless, very funny. We'll be very interested to see. Again, all the news that comes out. Hopefully we don't get more news as we're trying to wrap up again. But it's been a lot of fun. And once again, thank you guys all for listening. We do appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter at Cantiche Size, at NHL Chunky, at Lyss Hood. Check out Game Over Winnipeg when we come back in the fall. That's right, we are in fact coming back. Not that that
We
was
are
ever
still employed. It's
not
okay.
not that that was ever in doubt, but we will be back. Looking forward to the new season. Looking forward to all the news. There's gonna be a lot to talk about for the Jets,
Oh boy.
and I can't
Oh
wait.
boy.
Anyways,
Can't
thank you
wait.
again. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Thank you all for listening.